Mary had a little lamb.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
I acknowledge that former Secretary of State Brian Kemp will be certified as the victor in the 2018 gubernatorial election. But to watch an elected official who claims to represent the people in this state baldly pin his hopes for election on the suppression of the people's democratic right to vote has been truly appalling. This is not a speech of concession. Because concession means to acknowledge an action is right, true, or proper. As a woman of conscience and faith, I cannot concede that. But my assessment is the law currently allows no further viable remedy.
Oh man, why is it when we can't vote the wrong person wins? Why is that? So that was Georgia over the weekend. Stacey Abrams, she pledged to work to fix the voting problems in Georgia, so nobody will be able to fix the elections in Georgia. Come to Florida too, Stacey. Come to Florida too, please. Thank you. Thank you. It's just a request from a voter whose vote did not count. You know, this is just an amazing thing. It's no wonder that, Republicans have no interest in fixing the voting and the counting. They've mastered the art of fixing the elections, and they do it in such a way that nobody can track it. It's just anyway. Here's the good news: Democrats have a real shot in winning a Senate seat in Mississippi, which is going to be a little like Democrats wanting to win a seat in Alabama, which means it's doable, totally doable. Mike Espy, please. Thank you. Thank you. And also, there is unbelievable news that slid right under the radar in Texas. Texas decided to get rid of almost every Republican judge, except for one who was hired to oversee, I think, the drug courts. But every other judge in Harris County, Texas, every other judge, 59 of them now, are all Republicans, because Texas is one of those places where judges belong to a party. Now, what is so great about that? What's so great about that is that the GOP does fundraisers for Republican judges all the freaking time, right? So that the judge who gets the judgeship actually owes something to the GOP. And it turns out that those judges have stopped reading briefs and don't read motions. They just decide the spur of the moment, depending on who's standing in front of them, whether or not that person helped them to get to be the judge or didn't help them to get to be the judge. And they kind of rule like that there. That all comes to an end in at least Harris County, which is a big-ass county in Texas. So that was like an amazing thing. The Republican judge that was hired, yes, he was hired to oversee the drug court remains. That's what he's there for. But Harris County, all elected Republican judges, all voted out, leaving only Democrats on the bench in civil courts, criminal courts, family courts, juvenile courts, and probate courts. All 59 seats, all of them. And you know what's cool? 17 of the elected of the 59 black women, part of a group. They all work together to support each other and get elected. The other two members of the so-called Houston 19, they were already presiding over state district courts. They fell short. They were trying to get onto an appellate court, but they did not lose their district court seats. Now, that is amazing. Between these women, 220 years of experience are ready for public service in Harris County, Texas. And what's really crazy is that said, quote, a little more fairness, a little more impartiality, a little more equality is coming. Not everybody's happy about that. Lawyers who made $500,000 a year off of their relationship with a judge aren't going to see that anymore. This is pretty freaking amazing. Deidre Davis, she was elected to a civil court. She headed up this group of people that replaced all the Republicans. And she said that many civil judges who have held their benches for years have stopped reading pleadings and filings in cases and instead just make decisions on the spur of the moment when the litigants appear before them. Quote, the pleadings need to be read and reviewed if you're going to be fair and give an informed decision about what's going on. Oh, see, there's always something, an informed decision. Who needs that? You don't need an informed decision. You got the president of the United States declaring that he's going to, I don't know, issue an executive order and we'll have a great climate. You know, he'll just do an executive order that says, we must have a great climate. And the rake business, I'm sure you heard this in California, right? He was there over the weekend. He was in, a town called Paradise. He thought it was called Pleasure, right? When they corrected him, he said, yeah, whatever, pleasure. So, it doesn't. And then he said that he said that in Finland, which is near the Arctic Circle, Southern California, not so much, not really close to the Arctic Circle. But even this was a lie, and nobody has caught this, but I certainly did because it was so outrageous. President said that the president of Finland had told him that all you need to do is rake the forest. That's what you need. You need to rake the forest floor. You have to take care of the floor. And he said that the president of Finland had told him this, even though Finland is very close to the Arctic Circle. It has nothing to do with California or with Santa Ana winds or with El Niños or with anything. Nothing. But what was really interesting about it was the lie actually morphed, from before. Before he had said, before he went to Paradise, Pleasure in his mind, before he went to the hellscape, that is that town of what formerly was 26,000 people. Now we have 74 dead and about 1,000 missing. About 1,000 missing. This is amazing how much death there is. Okay, in Northern California, and then Malibu, they're just starting now to let people back in. But what does Malibu have to do with it? Nothing. But you know what? It wasn't even that. It was that he said it was the president of Finland, but before he had said it was some unnamed governor in the United States that told him all you need to do is rake the floor. Now, if that's, science be damned, and if all, he saw it on television. He did, right? So if all the sciencey people would just, stop being so sciencey and just sit and watch the tube, then they would understand we don't need all this damn science. All we need is rakes, see? All we need is rakes. And if he thinks that raking the forest floor is going to end climate change or stop the Santa Ana winds from blowing 70 miles an hour an ember, if he thinks that, then he should not build this wall, because he's going to need to organize caravans to rake the freaking floor of the forest. And imagine what it's going to do for our rake business. I mean, we can make 11 billion jobs. New jobs are coming, and there's all going to be, rake manufacturers. They're moving in. You see what's happening. You see what's happening, right? You see. Oh, my God. This was the sickest weekend. I mean, the air quality is so dangerous there. That people are wearing masks and doctors are on the television trying to tell people that it's got to be a certain kind of, it can't just be that, the throwaway. It's got to be the one that nothing permeates. And, other than that, stay indoors, don't breathe, don't go out. I mean, it's here.
For days now, residents of California have been living under a blanket of smoke. Air quality readings deemed very unhealthy, even hazardous, are plaguing major metropolitan areas like San Francisco, 170 miles south of the devastating Camp Fire. Wildfire smoke contains a mixture of thousands of compounds, chemicals, gases, and tiny particles that can be inhaled into the deepest parts of the lung.
Wonderful.
Complications from smoke exposure range from the mild eye and respiratory irritation to the more serious bronchitis, asthma, and worsening of pre-existing heart and lung disease.
Groovy.
People with chronic heart and lung conditions, pregnant women, and the elderly are especially vulnerable. Children are also at risk, partly because they have smaller breathing passages that can be seriously compromised by even a little narrowing. But poor air quality impacts healthy people as well. Officials recommend residents pay attention to air quality reports, When air quality is poor, stay indoors as much as possible with windows and doors closed. And when outside, avoid strenuous exercise. In terms of masks, it's only the right kind, called N95 or P100, properly fitted, that can provide some protection. And Rena, there are potential downsides. Masks can increase the work of breathing and might encourage people to do more outdoor activity, which, of course, can worsen exposure.
Well, Dick Cheney's finally right. The answer seems to be stay indoors and get some duct tape and Visqueen. If you feel like breathing anywhere in the state of California. Oh, my God, this is just so unbelievable. So, and it kills you when you hear, little tiny babies and little tiny children have little tiny, bronchial tubes and they can't. And the president is like rakes. It's all about rakes is what it is.
You're watching from New York or you're watching from Washington, D.C., and you don't really see the gravity of it. I mean, as big as they look on the tube, you don't see what's going on until you come here. And what we saw at Pleasure, what a name right now. But what we just saw, we just left Pleasure.
Paradise.
Or Paradise. And what we just saw at Paradise is just, it's just not acceptable.
Okay, it's not acceptable. What are we going to do about it, Mr. President?
Does seeing this devastation, though, change your opinion at all on climate change, Mr. President?
No. I have a strong opinion. I want great climate. We're going to have that, and we're going to have forests that are very safe. Because we can't go through this every year. We go through this. So we're going to have safe forests, and that's happening as we speak.
We're going to have great climate. We're going to have safe forests. What is he going to go? He's going to go back to the White House and he's going to put out an executive order and he's going to declare that we have great climate and we have safe forests. I mean, this is a sick man, really. And the surprising thing, when he was corrected about the town that was literally wiped out where 1,000 people are unaccounted for, 74 people are dead, and it's only 55% contained. You can't breathe the air in the, in the vicinity. And he didn't insist that the name of the town was actually Pleasure. So that's a good thing. At least he was willing to be corrected. And at least he was willing to get off this giant orange button, go there, and not watch it on the tube or listen to Fox and Friends talk about how it's, not a big deal, because they barely cover it. They don't even talk about it. When they said, paradise, everybody, all the reporters, paradise. Well, paradise. As if to say, you want to use the technical name? Okay, paradise. I think it's Pleasure, because I get to be a hero standing upon the pile. But when they talked about fire management and what to do...
You said there need to be changes in fire management. Should the state and local officials have been done?
No, we're going to work together with the federal government. No, state, local, and federal government. Federal government's going to work with the state and local, and we're going to help them with funding.
Funding?
And it's going to take a lot of funding, I will tell you.
Should they have done things differently before this point?
A lot of things have been learned. And they've been working very hard. And I think you're going to see something very spectacular over the next number of years.
Hey, California, you're about to see something really spectacular, but I think it's going to be duct tape and Visqueen and masked people walking around, the northern parts of California. Does this change your mind on climate change? No. We're going to have that. We're going to have great climate. We're going to have great climate, and we're going to have safe forests. Now, when we come back, I'm going to play you, the lie, the unbelievable lie. I don't know why nobody caught this, but, I am, after all, me. But he said that it was the president of Finland who told him about the raking and the need for the raking. And then, in another interview, he said it was some unnamed governor he doesn't want to name. Now, when he says unnamed, or when he says, some people are saying, or you hear people saying that, it's a lie. He saw it on television. And it was an easier thing to see it on television and say, that's what I'll say, than to actually study the solution.
Things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
And I know Gavin's committed, we're all committed, I'm committed to make sure that we get all of this cleaned out and protected. Got to take care of the floors, you know, the floors of the forests. Very important. God. You look at other countries where they do it differently, and it's a whole different story. I was with the president of Finland, and he said, we have a much different, we're a forest nation. He called it a forest nation. And they spend a lot of time on raking and cleaning and doing things, and they don't have any problem. And when it is, it's a very small problem. So I know everybody's looking at that, to that end, and it's going to work out. It's going to work out well.
Oh, if he wants enough landscapers to rake the forests of the United States, I'm just thinking he shouldn't build a wall. It's just, in fact, I think he's going to have to organize some caravan. But think about what it's going to do for our rake industry. Since the president of Finland gave him this inside secret about the forest nation and what you need to do near the Arctic Circle, but then, before he went to California, he actually put in the can an interview with Chris Wallace. And when he was sitting and talking to Chris Wallace before he went to, and how did Jerry Brown and Gavin Newsom stand with the president and just keep a straight face? I have no earthly idea. I mean, it's not a giggling situation. This is death, destruction. It's a hellscape out there. But I don't know how they didn't do a spit take. When he's president of Finland told me, got to rake the floors, got to take care of the floors. But when he went, when he sat down with Chris Wallace, he did this before Sunday. He did this on Friday, and he told Chris Wallace some unnamed state governor told him about the raking of the floors being the secret science.
I was watching the fireman the other day.
He was watching
and
the TV.
And they were raking areas. They were raking areas where the fire was right over there, and they're raking trees, little trees like this that are not trees, little bushes that you could see are totally dry. Weeds. And they're raking them. They're on fire. That should have been all raked out.
What about the argument?
You wouldn't have the fires.
What about the argument it's climate change, that it's drier, it's hotter, and that's contributing to it?
Maybe it contributes a little bit. The big problem we have is management. When I was in a certain state, I won't say which, the governor said, we've tested it. We clean out areas, and we actually set the fire just to see. We lose almost nothing. We can put it out right away. And then we leave areas unmaintained. He said, we'll lose 100,000 acres before you even know it. You need forest management. It has to be. I'm not saying that in a negative way, a positive. I'm just saying the facts.
It was a governor in an unnamed state. Actually, it was him watching the TV. And he saw firemen raking burning bushes. I'm surprised you didn't have a Moses reference. I really, you know what goes on here. He sees something on TV, or he asks somebody a question to a complicated problem, and they tell him like a little smidge, a little something, and he just imbibes that, and then he talks like he's an expert on the topic. You know a lot of people that do that. That is so obnoxious. It's like, and what do they say? That somebody who has a little bit of information is a dangerous, dangerous freak. And that is what this president is. So here's a note to scientists everywhere. Get out of the lab and sit in front of the television and watch the firemen rake in unnamed states with unnamed governors standing by, or go to Finland and learn about the Arctic Circle's management of forests, and then just say something that would lead somebody to think maybe you knew a little something about a forest, and you don't. You don't. This man grew up in freaking concrete, okay? He's a concrete man now. This guy grew up in New York and City. Okay, he grew up in the same place I did. He has no freaking earthly idea about forest management. He has no earthly idea what they do in Finland. He doesn't know what they do in any other state where there are forests. He doesn't know one thing about anything to do with climate change. And his advice to all the sciencey people who have concluded that climate change is here, that things are burning because it's hotter, winds are stronger, moisture is greater, causing flooding, etc., etc. And all of these things are getting much more extreme. No. We're going to have a great climate, and we're going to rake. We're going to rake a floor. This was so sick I mean, it's just so sad because so many people are missing. So many people are dead. Fires are only 55% contained. The campfire. Woolsey is in a little bit better. That's down in Malibu, for God's sake. He knows nothing.
It's been more than 10 days since this devastating fire devastated this community of 27,000 people. This morning, so many still locked in a constant struggle, searching for their loved ones, while crews are constantly sifting through wreckage all over town. It looks just like this. In paradise, more heartbreak.
Pleasure.
We have nothing left. We have nowhere to go. No one knows what to do. We're all living minute by minute out here.
Search crews still digging for any sign of nearly 1,000 residents listed missing. A painfully slow process that gets more difficult with each passing day. Rain is forecast later this week, which raises the possibility of mudslides and makes searches even more difficult, though it could help contain the fire.
We'll get through it because we're going to get through it together.
So many still desperately hoping to find friends and family.
You have reached the voicemail box.
That's all I get.
530.
Let us know you're okay, buddy.
Meanwhile, in the southern part of the state, the Woolsey fire is expected to be fully contained by Thanksgiving, but that's only after rain is in the forecast, opening up this entire state burn-scarred to the possibility of those devastating mudslides.
Oh, God. You can't win. You can't freaking win. First you had like a mass shooting, and then fires broke out, and now you're going to have mudslides if it rains. And you know what Trump's solution to it's going to be? We need to manufacture more pails and shovels. Everybody, should donate at the beach to the Californians so that they could have pails and shovels to dig out from the mud. I mean, this is just, and you ask them about climate? No. We're going to have great climate. We're going to have great climate. Air quality is so dangerous, so you need to wear a mask. No, I'm going to write an executive order. You'll be able to breathe tomorrow. Well, we'll solve it quickly, and we'll solve it. It's going to be spectacular, and wait till you see. You'll see it's going to be spectacular. We're going to have a great solution. We're going to have forests that are very safe. We're going to have... This is, I mean, we're at a critical point here. This is critical mass. Either, people start doing things differently, including infrastructure, including fire retardant, and including, fire breaks, and maybe even, artificial grasses that are flame retardant. I don't know, but neither does this president. But he's standing there oh, no, you'll see it's going to be spectacular. Wait, you're going to see it's going to be so good. Because I was watching TV and I was seeing them, burn bushes. And then some unnamed governor from some unnamed state who then turned into the president of Finland. This man is such a gaslighter. He is so dangerous. Dangerous. What you don't want in a fire situation is gaslights. Okay? You don't. And this man is doing that. He's making people crazy. He's making people nuts. And, I'm looking at whether or not these Trump voters are better off now that Trump's been president for 2 years. It's kind of like asking if opiate addicts are better off on opioids than they are without them, because it's kind of like they're the same people. They both live in dream fantasy worlds, and their reality just crumbles around them, and then they harm everybody around them. They break everybody around them's hearts, And so if you sit there and you say, are they better off than opioid addicts? You say no, because, and it doesn't really matter, because the answer to that question isn't going to do a damn thing to change their minds. But the truth is, no. Trump counties are in worse shape than they were 2 years ago. Worse shape. And we've just had an election, and we can't count votes. And the machines are disgustingly bad, and there's no incentive to fix it because they've figured out how to rig it. You got lawsuits, about whether or not Whitaker is qualified. If Whitaker needs Senate confirmation to be the Attorney General of the United States, and it's just everything is so off kilter. Everything is so out. It's just so. You can't vote. There's, we got a question about a free press now with Jim Acosta. They're sitting somewhere in the executive branch. They're going to write arbitrary rules, and you got to wear a certain outfit, and what days of the week the girls can come, and what days of the week the boys can come to the press room. I mean, it's just. And asked to grade his presidency over the weekend, he said, I would give myself an A+. And then he said, is that enough? I can go higher than that. Please don't tell me you don't know the alphabet. Please don't tell me you don't know the first letter of the alphabet. Please, please, please don't tell me that. This was an off the hook interview he gave to, and this is all he does now. Okay, he's going to do 2 more rallies. I just want you to know, right after Thanksgiving, because that Mississippi election is going to a runoff on the 27th. Please, Mississippi, do not forget, you have an election on the 27th of November, right after Thanksgiving, the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And I know a lot of people are going to forget to vote, or a lot of people are going to, just say, oh, I didn't realize it was that day. Or please, please, if you know somebody in Mississippi, or if you are in Mississippi, start calling or talking to your neighbors, or, make sure souls to the polls, something, vote, get everybody on a Tuesday to go vote, because this thing is off the hook. And he's going down there because all he knows how to do is hold freaking rallies. Now, they didn't do him any good in West Virginia. They didn't do him any good in Montana. Okay, they didn't do him any good in lots of places. But he's gonna do 2 rallies on the 26th in one day. 2 rallies. He's going to Tupelo and he's going to Biloxi on the 26th to rally people for the Cindy Hyde-Smith woman who said that if you had a public hanging, she'd sit with you in the front row, and also said it's not such a good idea to put voting, polling places inside college campuses because some of those schools are liberal and we're better off when they don't vote. Now, 32% of the population, or 37% of the population of Mississippi is African Americans. You really want to continue to live in a world where white, elite, privileged, appointed people sit there and disrespect you on the television, and it's okay. It's the 3rd decade of the 21st century. Please get rid of this. Purge it from your system. You got a great candidate, Mike Espy. He worked in the Clinton cabinet. He was agriculture secretary. I think he might know a little something about the management of the land. Agriculture secretary, and he was also a House member, and I don't know who this woman is. I don't really care. All I know is that she is a racist. Nobody's ever heard the colloquialism that if there was a public hanging, I'd sit in the front row with you. It's just what came top of mind when she was campaigning, and the idea of voter suppression just comes top of mind, spewing out of her mouth. I'm not going to play. I have the videos, but there's the audio so bad. You could look it up, and this. This is so here we are in a world where we're denying science, check. We have uber nationalism with the Trumpanzees. The president says he's a nationalist. You have death and destruction everywhere, and the president refuses to mitigate it or refuses to, give people comfort and aid. I mean, Puerto Rico. He doesn't want to pay another nickel for Puerto Rico to recover from Maria. He doesn't want another nickel. California, he just said, oh, I'll give you some funds, but we're going to have great safe forests, and you won't believe it'll be spectacular what you're about to see. You're about to see something, I don't know what. The man is just a con artist. He is dangerous. He is ridiculous. He is wrong, okay? First, he tells everybody he saw it on TV, you need to rake the floor. Then it was an unnamed governor from an unnamed state who told him you have to rake the floor. Then all of a sudden, the lie was the president of Finland, who, by the way, today said, I never spoke to Donald Trump about raking forests. Okay, it just never really came up. Then he downshifts in the Chris Wallace interview to trashing the military again. Now, you think about this. Right, and it's all because he is a demagogue, right? He trashes the military again. He trashed McCain's service. He likes people that don't get captured, which was an insult to anybody who was held against their will by a foreign enemy at any point, or fought in hostile territory under fear that they'd be captured, or went missing in action. All these families, and then Kaiser Khan, he insulted him because Kaiser Khan went to the Democratic National Convention, and so therefore his son's service, also his last name was Khan, that wasn't Aryan enough for Donald Trump to give any respect to this soldier who gave the final and ultimate sacrifice for his country. He didn't go to the cemetery on Veterans Day. Now he says, oh, I should go, and subsequently maybe I will. Oh my God. I mean, this man is just unbelievable. And then He trashes retired Admiral William McRaven because he didn't get Osama bin Laden fast enough. And also, he's a Hillary supporter. He's an Obama supporter. Therefore, his service is a pile of dew.
Bill McRaven, retired admiral, Navy SEAL, 37 years, former head of U.S. Special Operations.
Hillary Clinton fan.
Special Operations.
Excuse me, Hillary Clinton fan.
Who led the operations, commanded the operations that took down Saddam Hussein and that killed Osama bin Laden, says that your sentiment is the greatest threat to democracy in his lifetime.
He's a Hillary Clinton backer and an Obama backer. And frankly,
he was a Navy SEAL.
Wouldn't it have been nice if we got Osama bin Laden a lot sooner than that? Wouldn't it have been nice? You know, think of this. Living in Pakistan, beautifully in Pakistan, in what I guess they considered a nice mansion. I don't know, I've seen nicer. But living in Pakistan, right next to the military academy, everybody in Pakistan knew he was there. And we give Pakistan $1.3 billion a year. And they don't tell him. They don't tell him.
You're not even going to give them credit for taking down bin Laden?
They took him down, but look. There's news right there. He lived in Pakistan. We're supporting Pakistan. We're giving them $1.3 billion a year, which we don't give them anymore, by the way. I ended it because they don't do anything for us. They don't do a damn thing for us. I'm totally in favor of the media. I'm totally in favor of free press. It's got to be fair press. When it's fake.
But the president get to decide what's fair and what's not.
I can tell what's fair and not. And so can my people, and so can a lot of other people.
I understand that, but
when you do something very good and they write it badly, and this is consistently, when you, as an example, rarely do they talk about...
Barack Obama whined about Fox News all the time, but he never said we were the enemy of the people.
Well, no, he didn't talk about the news. He didn't talk about anything. I'm only saying it very differently than anyone's ever said it before. I'm saying fake news, false reporting, dishonest reporting, of which there is a lot, and I know it. See, I know it because I'm a subject of it. A lot of people don't know it, but when I explain it to them, they understand it. And Chris, you know that better than you don't have to sit here and act like a perfect little, wonderful, innocent angel. I know you too well. I knew your father too well. That's not your gene. But let me tell you, I think
some of the coverage of you, sir, and I've said it on the record, is biased. But I don't think that
most of it is biased.
There is so much there in that one little clip that it blows your mind because he is incapable of telling the truth. But he attacked Admiral Bill McRaven because he didn't think that he got Osama bin Laden soon enough. And that Osama bin Laden was living beautifully in Pakistan, I guess what they considered a nice mansion. I don't know. I've seen nicer. Yeah, I remember he was sitting on the floor on a mat watching a 13-inch black and white TV, right? No gold leaf, no paintings of Trump, so I'm sure he's seen it. But he attacks Bill McRaven, the man who led the raid that got bin Laden, because Donald Trump can't chew gum and walk all over the military at the same time.
Connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844. McRaven is now responding to the president's latest comments. He tells CNN, quote, "I did not back Hillary Clinton or anyone else. I am a fan of President Obama and President George W. Bush, both of whom I worked for. I admire all presidents, regardless of their political party, who uphold the dignity of the office and who use that office to bring the nation together in challenging times. I stand by my comment that the president's attack on the media is the greatest threat to our democracy in my lifetime. When you undermine the people's right to a free press and freedom of speech and expression, then you threaten the Constitution and all for which it stands." CNN's Boris Sanchez is at the White House for us tonight. Boris, defenders are going to say the president is simply hitting back, but this isn't the first time the president has had a controversy with a military member.
That's right, Anna. The president consistently fighting back on any criticism, whether coming from a member of the military or even military families. It's something that his supporters enjoy thoroughly, that the president fights back whenever he feels he's been attacked, though it's led to a number of awkward moments with military members and their families. Here's this list. You'll recall back in 2016, the president drew criticism, or I should say 2015, he drew criticism when he said that Senator John McCain wasn't a war hero because he was trapped by the Vietnamese. Then you'll recall that in 2016, during the presidential campaign, he attacked the Khan family, that Gold Star family, which spoke out at the Democratic National Convention. He also had a spat with a Gold Star family as president, the family of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, who disputed some of what President Trump said that he talked about with Johnson's widow in a phone call. We should also point out President Trump has never actually visited troops in war zones, something that he was criticized for this week. He's promised he will do that, but it is notable that the president hasn't done so yet. It's considered one of the basic requirements for being commander-in-chief. And this week, the president also drew criticism because he didn't visit Arlington National Cemetery on Veterans Day. The president told Fox News that is something he regrets. Listen to this.
I should have done that. I was extremely busy on calls for the country. We did a lot of calling, as you know. I think.
But this is Veterans Day.
I probably, you know, in retrospect, I should have, and I did last year, and I will virtually every year. But we had come in very late at night, and I had just left literally the American Cemetery in Paris, and I really probably assumed that was fine. And I was extremely busy because of affairs of state, doing other things.
He's a jackass.
He is a jackass. He's an absolute jackass. A lifetime of service. William McRaven gave 37 years of his life to service to this country. And he can be denigrated as being, his service wasn't good service because the president wants to believe that McRaven didn't get Osama bin Laden fast enough and that he is a Hillary Clinton supporter or a Barack Obama supporter. Now, McRaven has done a couple of things, okay? He responded and he said, I did not back Hillary Clinton or anyone else. I am a fan of President Obama and President George W. Bush, both of whom I worked for. I admire all presidents, regardless of their political party, who uphold the dignity of the office and who use that office to bring the nation together in challenging times. I stand by my comment that the president's attack on the media is the greatest threat to our democracy in my lifetime. When you undermine the people's right to a free press and freedom of speech and expression, then you threaten the Constitution and all for which it stands. Now, McRaven has said this repeatedly in public. He said this at a college commencement address, and it was a journalism school, and he was telling these students, don't be disheartened. Don't lose. You have got to do everything you can do to speak truth to power in this country. It is a check. It is something in the Constitution. It is in the First Amendment. And that is what we fight for. And that is why you need to do everything that you want to do as a journalist and cover people in authority and hold them to account.
On February 17th, the president said the news media is the enemy of the American people. The news media is the enemy of the American people. This sentiment may be the greatest threat to democracy in my lifetime. This sentiment. And I will tell you as journalism majors, as Americans, you should challenge that sentiment and that statement every opportunity you can.
So that was Admiral McRaven talking to Moody College of Communication. These were a bunch of journalism students. And then you might recall that William McRaven wrote a very brief op-ed in the Washington Post where he talked about, first of all, 37 years of service to the country, okay, retired Navy admiral. Here's another thing you may or may not know about him. He has leukemia. William McRaven is literally fighting blood cancer at this very moment. And he actually, served as the Joint Special Operations Commander from 2011 to 2014. In 2011, that's when the Navy SEAL raid happened in Pakistan, and that killed Osama bin Laden. Okay, he also captured, found and coordinated the capture of Saddam Hussein, who we found, in a farm someplace in a hole. Remember that? Yeah, that's McRaven. And, the President of the United States has decided that he's a better commander. He knows more than the generals. Maybe you'll remember that when Syria used gas against its own people, we lobbed a couple of Tomahawk missiles at a freaking airport that was operational the next day. Remember that one? Maybe you'll remember that just 5 days after the president became the president, he was sitting and he was having dinner with Jared, his top advisor, Jared Kushner and Steve Bannon and Flynn, who has since pled guilty. And he decided to order a bombing of Yemen. Do you remember the bombing of Yemen? I mean, I hate to make you remember 2 years ago, but this is your commander-in-chief. He decided to go ahead with an operation that the SEALs told President Obama not to go ahead with in Yemen because you needed a moonless night so no one would see our SEALs. And Trump decided he knew more than the generals, which he has said, and he decided to greenlight it with the advice of Jared Kushner, that military magician. He's just so... Who wouldn't want to fight for Jared Kushner as your, commander-in-chief? Who wouldn't want Steve Bannon to be calling the shots on military operations? And Flynn. But everything that could go wrong with that Yemen mission did go wrong. You remember that? Chief Petty Officer William Owens, he died. He was killed. And, of course, they knew that they shouldn't go ahead with this raid because somebody tipped off the rebels in Yemen that the SEALs were coming. And the SEALs knew they were screwed before they even started. They knew that there was a communications intercept. And the commandos in this unit knew that the mission was somehow compromised, but Trump ordered it anyway, and they pressed on. And they were flown into the area. An Osprey crashed, had to be destroyed by a missile so that we didn't leave any of our technology behind. They had lost the element of surprise. They came under fire for almost an hour. We lost the chief petty officer. Civilians were killed in this mess. Some children were killed. You remember an 8-year-old daughter of Anwar al-Awlaki was killed. Now, he's dead. He was an al-Qaeda guy, but he died a long time ago. We killed him. But now his 8-year-old daughter, this was his first counterterrorism operation. The second, wartime thing he did was, lob some tow missiles into Syria after they gassed their own people. Now you've got the Saudis who probably tipped off the Yemen rebels. You got the Saudis who are saying, well, Khashoggi. So, I mean, it's awful. And the president of the United States will not hold the Saudis accountable for the death of a journalist who lived in Virginia. I mean, this whole thing it's so unbelievably obvious that this president doesn't give a damn about anything that Americans who vote for him say they care about. We love our troops. We support the troops. Support the troops. You don't love our troops. The president trashes them every chance you get. You had 82,000 still not getting their housing payments. The VA, he lies about it every rally he goes to. He says, and we got Veterans Choice. You know when Veterans Choice was passed? Somebody please Google it in the MAGA movement or whatever it is. Because that movement stinks, man. Worse than, a Sunday morning movement, really. Veterans' Choice was passed in 2014 under a different president, the one who got Osama bin Laden. This is just so unbelievable. So McRaven wrote this very brief op-ed back in August, okay? after John Brennan's security clearance was revoked because the president didn't like him. Same thing with Jim Acosta, because the president doesn't like him. And so McRaven wrote this op-ed about a free press. And he said, former CIA Director John Brennan, whose security clearance you revoked on Wednesday, is one of the finest public servants I have ever known. Few Americans have done more to protect this country than John. He is a man of unparalleled integrity, whose honesty and character have never been in question, except by those who don't know him. Therefore, I would consider it an honor if you would revoke my security clearance as well, so I can add my name to the list of men and women who have spoken up against your presidency. Like most Americans, I had hoped that when you became president, you would rise to the occasion and become the leader this great nation needs. A good leader tries to embody the best qualities of his or her organization. A good leader sets the example for others to follow. A good leader always puts the welfare of others before himself or herself. Your leadership, however, has shown very little of these qualities. Through your actions, you have embarrassed us in the eyes of our children, humiliated us on the world stage, and worst of all, divided us as a nation. If you think for a moment that your McCarthy-era tactics will suppress the voices of criticism, you are sadly mistaken. The criticism will continue until you become the leader we prayed you would be. And that's why he's attacking McRaven. And when you look at, the prowess of the decision-making in the military arena that this president has made, knowing that the element of surprise was lost in Yemen, knowing that the Syrians gassed their own people, knowing that, TOW missiles would do absolutely nothing, knowing that, the Yemen operation was doomed before it began, and he ordered it anyway, on the advice of these really, really supreme military commanders, Steve Bannon and Jared Kushner. You got to understand, we're in a bad place. We're in a seriously bad place. We can't vote. He's trashing the military. He only likes, people that bow to him. He is a king. And everybody's reputation, no matter how much service, can be trashed.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Let's get to the bigger issue. In 2017, last year, you tweeted this, and I want to quote it accurately. The fake news media is not my enemy. It is the enemy of the American people.
It's true, 100%. Not the media. I'm glad you're finally quoting it correctly, because they like to leave the fake news.
Okay,
out.
but that's what you said.
Well, fake news. So
but
the people that are supporting me in particular, they're very smart people. They're hardworking, brilliant, great people. They know when the news is fake. And they get angry when they see all of the fakeness. Frankly, the networks.
There have been people who've been critical of other presidents. No president has liked his press coverage. John Kennedy, in your Oval Office, canceled the subscription to the New York Herald Tribune. Nobody called it the enemy of the American people.
Chris, I'm calling the fake news is the enemy. It's fake. It's phony.
But a lot of times, sir, it's just news you don't like.
No, it's not. No. I don't mind getting bad news if I'm wrong. If I do something wrong, like, for instance, the cemetery, I was not allowed to go because of the Secret Service.
Oh, my God.
Because they expected to take a helicopter. Okay. They had zero visibility. They said, sir, we are totally unequipped for you to go. In addition to that, the cemetery was far too far away from Air Force One, which is sort of like a control center where you had to be near. Now, one paper that I saw wrote it that way. They said I stayed out of it because of the rain. And yet, the following day, I made a speech at the American Cemetery. It was pouring. It wasn't even really raining the first day, but the fog was tremendous, okay?
But, sir, leaders in authoritarian countries like Russia, China, Venezuela,
Saudi Arabia,
now repress the media using your words.
I can't talk for other people. I can only talk for me. I will tell you.
But you're seen around the world as a beacon for repression, not
Chris,
for...
I'm not talking about you, but you sometimes maybe, but I'm not talking about you. The news about me is largely phony. It's false.
It's true. The reason why he could have gone to the cemetery if he wanted to go, General Dunford went. He got in a car and he drove, and it was 50 miles away, which is kind of the distance between where I am and Fort Lauderdale. Okay, you understand that? Some people do that for a doctor's appointment. So it just makes no sense. He's just sitting there lying. And Chris Wallace is trying to show that this president is organizing the most hateful elements of various governments around the world to suppress the media. Didn't bring up Saudi Arabia, where Khashoggi was killed. Now, why was Khashoggi killed? Khashoggi was killed by the Saudis because they didn't think he was loyal enough to the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince is lying and saying he didn't order Khashoggi to be killed. Now, the first story they told about Khashoggi was that he left. He left that consulate. And they said, well, then where's the video of him leaving? They showed video. It was a stand-in. It was a double. It wasn't Khashoggi. It was an actor. They sent 15 people. One had a bone saw, for God's sake. The CIA, Gina Haspel, the new CIA director, has said for sure, without a doubt in her mind, Khashoggi was killed by the Saudi prince on his order in the consulate. And the president won't do anything because whatever it is, I mean, the Saudis are supportive of him. Ivanka went there. She had a lovely 2 days. He's got a hotel in Dubai, and nothing's going to disturb his business, not even the killing of a journalist. And then he sits there and he's, I'm so glad you said, fake news is the enemy of the people. Meanwhile, in that tweet, if you noticed, it said ABC, CBS, CNN, NBC. All of and the failing New York Times was also included in that tweet, and he called them all fake news for reporting that General Dunford managed to get to the cemetery, and he didn't show up on Veterans Day here. And he said, well, I should have, but I was doing affairs of the state. This man has nothing on his schedule. Do you remember on Veterans Day? Because I do, because I was livid. At 10:03 in the morning on Veterans Day, the president's schedule was made public, and it had nothing on it. Nothing. All he knows how to do is rallies, and all he knows how to do is lie, and all he knows how to do is stand there and tell his people that he takes credit for what other people did, and he knows more than generals. And then he does two military things. They both, they were both tragic. One just cost us, $1 billion, and the other one, we had dead people, and the element of surprise was lost, and he ordered it to go ahead on the brilliant military advice of Steve Bannon and Jared Kushner. I mean, this guy is disgusting and dangerous. They asked him about Khashoggi, or Chris Wallace did.
Turkish President Erdogan says that he has shared a tape with the U.S. and other countries that is of the killing of Jamal Khashoggi inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Have you, one, either heard the tape yourself or been briefed on it? And if so, to your mind, what does it show?
We have the tape. I don't want to hear the tape. No reason for me to hear the tape.
Why don't you, why don't you want to hear it, sir?
Because it's a suffering tape. It's a terrible tape. I've been fully briefed on it. There's no reason for me to hear it. In fact, I said to the people, should I? They said, you really shouldn't. There's no reason. I know everything that went on in the tape without having tape.
And what happened?
It was very violent, very vicious, and terrible.
A month ago, you said you had spoken with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and that he had told you directly that he had no knowledge of this.
That's right. And still says that.
But we now know that some of the people closest to him, some of his closest advisors, were part of this. Question: did MBS lie to you, sir?
I don't know. Who can really know? But I can say this: he's got many people now.
Many people
that say he had no knowledge.
What if the Crown Prince, speaking to you, the President of the United States, directly lied to you about?
Well, he told me that he had nothing to do with it. He told me that, I would say, maybe 5 times. At different points.
But what if he's lying?
As recently as a few days ago.
Do you just live with it because you need him?
Well, will anybody really know?
Gina Haspel knows. Gina Haspel, the head of the CIA, she wasn't my first pick. As you know, she's a torture queen, actually told the President of the United States that there is no doubt in the intelligence community's collective conclusion that the Prince of Saudi Arabia ordered the killing and the dismemberment, the beheading of Jamal Khashoggi in the Saudi consulate. They have lied. They said he left. No, he didn't leave. They had a guy that looked like him make, a fake exit tape. Then they said, oh, it turned into a fight and the fight went bad. And remember, I kept saying, don't you hate it when you get into a fight and you fall on a bone saw? I hate when that happens. And then they said, well, the fight got out of control and he cut his own head off is what happened there. And then they said, well, okay, he was murdered, but we had nothing to do with it in the Saudi royal family. And now the CIA and the intelligence community collectively agrees that this Saudi prince is lying to the President of the United States. And the President of the United States simply sits there and goes, well, he said he didn't do it. He said it 5 times. He didn't do it. This is just like Kim Jong-un. I fell in love. He wrote nice letters about me, and I fell in love with him. And now we know that he's building ballistic missiles. He's still got his nuclear program. We're able to see what goes on over there. And he says, you're going to see. It's going to be spectacular. You're going to see. It's going to be so good. It's going to be... Same thing with Vladimir Putin. He stood on a stage in Helsinki, Finland, and he told the entire world that Vladimir Putin denied very strongly and powerfully that he did not interfere in our elections. Meanwhile, Robert Mueller has indicted, Russian intelligence operatives and a Russian company that is run by Vladimir Putin's chef, because we all know that being a caterer can net you $1 billion in a country where the average income is $450 a month. Russia. He just cannot make himself call out autocrats. Duterte, he just calls up his friends and he says, get on your motorbikes and kill these drug addicts, and then they take them out, and everybody, and Trump stands there and says, it's a kind of a good idea. He's very strong. He's very strong. And then he attacks our military, our service members. He tells you things are better for vets, that he did Veterans Choice, which he didn't do. That was done in 2014. He tells you that he's created somehow a great economy, which he had nothing to do with. In fact, in Trump country, specifically, those red counties, they're doing piss poor. They're not seeing any improvement. Things are literally getting worse. The cost of gas is going up. The cost of health care is skyrocketing. There's no big change in jobs pouring in. Maybe the rake industry will pour in. I don't know. But no matter what, and he denies that there was a blue wave. I mean, the House races, we haven't seen the House flip like this in 40 years. And now he's attacking the free press by saying they're fake. CNN, ABC, NBC, the failing New York Times, everybody is lying about him. Only he's telling the truth, and his people know that only he's telling the truth. This is so scary. This is so sick. This is so wrong. He trusts the Saudis more than he trusts our own intelligence operators. He trusts the Russians more than he trusts our own FBI, our own Robert Mueller, who was FBI director under a Republican president for 8 years, and then was kept on by Barack Obama for, I think, two more years. And he just trashes everything that he is afraid of, like the truth. You have Tucker Carlson sitting on Fox News all day, every day, saying, no, CNN is fake news. It's all fake news. Doing this, the most racist program, inviting white supremacists on his show, not even making Sean Hannity doesn't even make believe that he's not biased anymore. We had a journalist killed. Now he takes away Brennan's security clearance and Jim Acosta's press pass because he doesn't like freedom. He doesn't like a strong military. He keeps trying to denigrate it, and certain people's service isn't up to Bone Spur's standards. It's a man who never served, never will serve. His kids will never serve. And yet 37 years, I hate him.
Live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
You should have had a softer tone in your 2 years as president. But since then, some could argue you've been on a tear. At the press conference the day after the election, you mocked some of the Republican congressmen who lost, not embracing you.
Mia Love gave me no love, and she lost. Too bad. Sorry about that, Mia.
You went after 2 African-American reporters and basically said that they were dumb.
The same thing with April Ryan. I watch her get up. I mean, you talk about somebody that's a loser. She doesn't know what the hell she's doing.
Do you want them to rein in Robert Mueller?
What a stupid question that is. What a stupid question. But I watch you a lot. You ask a lot of stupid questions.
Question. I was in St. Joe's, Missouri this last week, and I was talking to a lot of loyal Republicans. They love what you've done to the economy. They love the fact that you have basically put ISIS out of business. The one thing they say is, why do you have to be so divisive? Why don't you do more to bring the country together?
I think that if I was very different, I wouldn't have gotten what we had to get. We got the biggest tax cuts in history. We got Anwar approved. We got rid of the individual mandate, which was the most unpopular thing you can imagine, health care. I got rid of it. Everybody said it would be impossible to get rid of it. And many, the regulations. I think if I was more modified, more moderate in that sense, I don't think I would have done half of the things that I was able to get completed.
So he's divisive because it works for him. The individual mandate, destruction of it, has caused healthcare to skyrocket. Skyrocket. Okay. Then he approved this pipeline, right? The Canadian pipeline, and the courts struck it down, saying he did not even do minimal due diligence. He didn't even submit an environmental impact statement, and they've killed the building of the pipeline because he won't do the work. He trashes the media to the glee and joy of Fox News watchers who sit there and feed themselves hours and hours of this.
In the past couple of days, you've heard a lot of huffing and puffing about free speech and freedom of the press and how those freedoms are currently imperiled by the White House. And to be clear, we are for free speech, unfettered, absolute free speech, the kind of speech guaranteed by the First Amendment and ratified consistently by the Supreme Court. We've defended that kind of free speech almost every night here for the past 2 years. Many others, mostly on the left, have attacked speech.
What?
So we know who's for free speech and who's against it, and we cannot help but notice that some of free speech's greatest enemies are now posing as its defenders all of a sudden.
What?
Take CNN, for example. It was CNN that almost single-handedly led the campaign to have broadcaster Alex Jones banished from the internet on the grounds that they didn't like what Jones had to say. Ultimately, CNN succeeded in doing that.
Oh, my God, I can't take it. That is a longer clip, believe me. And he goes on to say CNN is fake news. And Alex Jones was, the reason why Alex Jones was pulled down from private platforms, is because Alex Jones was threatening people. He was threatening violence. He was calling to arms people. He said, patriots, you know what to do. He was, denigrating the Sandy Hook parents with lies. He was crying on the platforms, telling everybody that Hillary Clinton had a pedophile ring. That's not free speech. That's defamation. That's lying. That's harassment, and that's threatening. You had people a person get in his car and drive all the way from North Carolina to Washington, D.C. to shoot his way into Comet Pizza Parlor and ping pong so that he could save the children that Hillary Clinton had in the basement. And this is what you had Bill O'Reilly, who was fired for sexual harassment, who was on television for years, not only promoting a birther and racist, but also calling a doctor Tiller the baby killer over and over and over again until somebody picked up a gun, went to Dr. Tiller's church on Sunday and killed him. This is the same as Jim Acosta asking a question after he's been called on and sicking a White House intern to grab his microphone away from him. Even the judge, who was a Trump appointee, could not figure out who gave the order to take away Jim Acosta's press pass. The judge, who was a Trump appointee, wanted so bad to rule for Donald Trump, but he couldn't because they wouldn't even cop to who took Jim Acosta's press pass away. Now, they're saying today they're not going to fight it any longer in the court. Instead, because this judge, counter to what Sarah Sanders tweeted, how this Judge Kelly, ruled for the First Amendment and that the White House doesn't have to extend it to just anybody. That is not what Kelly did. He didn't rule on the First Amendment because he knew if he did, Trump would lose. So instead, he focused on the Fifth Amendment, due process. And he said there is no process here for somebody to say, please review the tape, or I didn't accost her. I don't believe anybody touched her. I don't think that, she was accosted. I asked the White House. No one will cop to it. No one will say what they saw happen. All I know is a fake video was tweeted out. It was sped up. It was not the actual video. Nobody will cop to who ordered Jim. So, I'm just going to rule on the fact that you didn't provide Jim Acosta due process. So the White House decided they'll make a process. They will issue new rules, everybody. New rules. Rules for radicals. Rules for radical presidents who don't like free speech, who want to tame and muzzle the media. And so in the bowels of the White House, you have staff attorneys, underpaid staff attorneys, toiling away, coming up with new rules. And they did. And now you're only allowed to ask one question. No follow-up unless you're given permission. If you're not given permission for a follow-up question, you will then yield the floor. And that means they define yielding the floor to include, when applicable, physically surrendering the microphone to White House staff for use by the next questioner. Failure to abide by any of rules 1 through 3 may result in suspension or revocation of the journalist's hard pass.
What we have here is a 2-page letter from the White House that was sent over to Acosta a few minutes ago, and it confirms that his hard pass, that's the pass that he uses every day to enter the White House, will be restored. That means the White House is voluntarily granting access back to Acosta, whereas back on Friday, it was a court that was forcing the White House to give his pass back temporarily. So we've been in the midst of this 14-day temporary restraining order. There's 11 more days remaining on it as mandated by a judge. There's been back and forth over the weekend where it seemed the White House was once again threatening Acosta, saying that as soon as that temporary restraining order expires, you're going to be out of here again. CNN went back to court this morning, asked the judge for another hearing. But the change here, this backing down as of 3 p.m., is that the White House is saying in this letter, that the pass will be restored voluntarily by the administration. Now, there is, of course, a caveat, and I think that the White House wants to string this along, wants to make this a threat that looms over the entire White House press corps.
Yep.
The letter to Acosta says, if you refuse to follow our new rules in the future, we will take action in accordance with the rules set forth above. So what's the new rule? The new rule is one question per reporter at a press conference. You get to ask one question.
Oh, wow.
And, quote, by the discretion of the president or White House officials taking questions, a follow-up may be permitted. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to establish some, kind of ground rules within a press conference setting so that nobody can act out of order. Now, obviously, Brooke, we all remember the days of Sam Donaldson. We all remember the days of Dan Rather. Press conferences with follow-up questions have been going on for as long as there's been press conferences. Yep. But I think the Trump administration here is trying to control the situation, control the narrative, and limit the number of questions that get asked at these events. So for now, the news is Acosta's press pass is back. The White House is backing down. We don't know what's going to happen with the legal fight, but presumably there'll be a settlement at this point. Longer term, though, we might end up back here in the future. Because if the White House is really going to try to enforce these rules, there could be further issues weeks or months or years from now.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too.
No, it's what the end of the letter says.
Oh, it does? You know what? I hadn't read the last line. But yes.
After all of that.
I guess in the spirit of friendliness.
So the president wants to control the press. The president wants, to pretend that he's all about being questioned. He's all about truth to power. He's all about accountability. He's all about transparency. He's all about answering difficult questions. But no, he wants to punish the press. So he has arbitrarily decided what is or what is not permitted in the press room. And now this judge has to go back and rule on the First Amendment because he neglected to do so. He only ruled on due process. So they created a freaking process. And this process is one question, no follow-ups. Now, we all know in journalism, it's all about the follow-up question. Even when you do a simple interview, even if it's somebody friendly, if you're trying to understand the issue on the table and you ask a question and you get an answer, you need to ask a follow-up question so you can say, oh, so I understand. So what you're saying is that we're going to give everybody a rake. Where are all these rakes going to come from, right? You see what I mean? But he doesn't want any follow-up questions. He wants one question to make an appearance that he's got an open press room, and no follow-up questions unless you're deemed, unless you're permitted, unless it's been allowed, and failure to back off and yield the floor, meaning give the microphone to the next person in the middle of your questioning, means your press pass can be revoked. They are punishing journalism. They are limiting the number of questions that reporters are allowed to ask, how they may address the president, how they address the president's minions, who they may or may not have access to, who cannot cover the White House, who can. And of course, this judge did on the fringes rule that if you open up the press briefing room to journalists, then you can't say no to journalists who apply to the Secret Service for clearance, meaning they get cleared because the only reason previously that you could have been denied is if you represented a physical threat to the president or his minions. And now they have decided that they are going to punish journalists. This is the end of free speech in America. This is the end of being able to ask questions of powerful people. This is the end of a open press. This is untenable reporting situations that they are creating. This is a death sentence for a free press. They could take away your credentials for a lifetime. You understand? This is major punishment. Major punishment for having the temerity to ask difficult questions. This is the president shutting down a free press, just like Saudi Arabia, just like Russia. where journalists disappear, journalists end up beheaded, journalists are, it's like every third world banana republic. There's no difference here anymore. There is nothing that's going to protect, anybody who wants to ask a difficult question. And that means they're going to be so, timid because they can't lose their access that they won't ask difficult questions. This president is an affront on every constitutional right that every American has and holds dear, that every journalist relies on in order to report the truth, that everybody relies on in order to vote and have their vote counted, that everybody relies on to have a newspaper that's got real information in it so you can guide your investments, you can guide your life, you can make decisions about, what town is a reasonable town for you to try. After college, or a reasonable town to move to, or this is unbelievable. This is just unbelievable. And you've got the president saying, I believe Putin, I believe Kim Jong-un, I believe the Prince of Saudi Arabia, I believe Duterte of the Philippines. I believe in these autocrats. Their word is much, much better than CNN's word, than fact checkers' words, than the New York Times, than... This is sick. This is really sick. And he said from the very beginning he hated the press and he was going to do whatever. Maybe he was going to make libel laws stricter. Remember? Libel laws. And it turned out when he was talking about libel laws, it was the Stormy Daniels matter. And it turned out that he was involved in the Stormy Daniels matter every single step of the way. And he was lying. And he let Michael Cohen just shift in the wind until Michael Cohen actually, had to take a plea. So no free press. Let me tell you something. This Whitaker thing is this is an attack on, this is an attack on the actual functioning of government itself, right? Because if he has an attorney general that enables him to do whatever he wants, including ignore the courts, because that's the problem with Whitaker. I don't know if you remember that Whitaker is a guy who thinks that the very first conclusion about the separation of powers was a Supreme Court case called Marbury versus Madison. It's the first thing you learn in political science class. What did Marbury versus Madison say? It said that the Supreme Court is the final arbiter of what the law is. Well, Whitaker has said, no, that's not true. He believes that the final arbiter of what the law is the President of the United States, rendering the Supreme Court useless. The Senate is now useless because they haven't confirmed him, and it's a violation of the law not to confirm the Attorney General of the United States. And we don't even know who the Attorney General of the United States is under our law. Is it Whitaker or is it Rosenstein? And there's a million lawsuits out there right now having to do with who's the Attorney General. And when the Supreme Court decides that the Attorney General can't be Whitaker because it violates the succession clause, and the Attorney General of the United States must have the advice and consent of the Senate in order to take that job, they're going to ignore it. They're going to ignore it.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
You have already made at least one big change, naming Matt Whitaker as your acting Attorney General. He has a long record of speaking out against the special counsel and his probe.
I could see a scenario where Jeff Sessions is replaced with a recess appointment, and that Attorney General doesn't fire Bob Mueller, but he just reduces the budget so low that his investigation grinds to almost a halt.
The truth is,
there was no collusion with the Russians in the Trump campaign.
How do you know?
Did you know, before you appointed him, that he had that record and was so critical of Robert Mueller?
I did not know that. I did not know he took views on the Mueller investigation as such.
And when you found that out?
I don't think it had any effect. If you look at those statements, they really can be viewed either way. But I don't think it would have any effect.
Well, he says there's no collusion.
Chris, I'll tell you what.
He says you can starve the investigation.
What do you do when a person's right? There is no collusion. He happened to be right. I mean, he said it. So if he said there is collusion, I'm supposed to be taking somebody that says there is, because then I wouldn't take him for two reasons. But the number one reason is the fact that he would have been wrong. If he said that there's no collusion, he's right.
He is going to have to make, or could potentially make, a lot of big calls in the Mueller investigation. If Mueller decides that he wants to subpoena you, the Attorney General, Whitaker, can block that. If Mueller issues a final report, he can decide how much goes to Congress or doesn't go to Congress. You tweeted this week about, quote, Bob Mueller and his gang of Democrat thugs.
Right.
Thugs.
If Whitaker decides in any way to limit or curtail the Mueller investigation, are you okay with that?
Look, it's going to be up to him. I think he's very well aware politically. I think he's astute politically. He's a very smart person, a very respected person. He's going to do what's right. I really believe he's going to do what's right.
But you won't overrule him if he decides to curtail.
I would not get involved. And all these people that say, I'm going to end the investigation, you know, they've been saying that now for, how long has this witch hunt gone on? It's gone on for what?
Since May of 17.
Okay, but how long have I been looked at? You know when I've been looked at?
Since July of 2016.
From the day I announced, I was looked at as a candidate with nothing, no proof, with phony people like McCabe and Strzok and his lover. You had Lisa Page, his lover. These people were looking at me. They wanted an insurance policy just in case I won or Hillary lost. And this was the insurance policy. It's a scam. There was no collusion whatsoever, and the whole thing is a scam.
Yeah, you know how Mueller got to be Mueller is because Donald Trump decided to fire James Comey over the Russia thing, and Rosenstein decided, oh crap, we need a special counsel. That's how Mueller got to be, not because of Lisa Page, not because of Strzok, not because of McCabe, okay? Because he sat on Lester Holt and told Lester Holt that he fired Comey to obstruct justice, to stop an investigation of himself. That's how Mueller got to be Mueller. And he's trashing Mueller. He's calling Mueller a Democratic thug. He's calling McCraven unworthy of, being an admiral after 37 years of service. You know, this man, I swear to God. And if Whitaker, he wasn't aware that Whitaker sat on the TV auditioning for this job. But if Whitaker was a stand-up guy, Whitaker wouldn't take this job, just like Kavanaugh wouldn't have taken the job, knowing the kind of division it would create without a Senate confirmation. Whitaker would insist on being Senate confirmed. Mueller does not need Senate confirmation because Mueller is an inferior officer who reports to Rod Rosenstein and now to Whitaker, who is getting briefed on everything that the Mueller investigation has, so Trump can lie. He even took offense when they said, your lawyers sat and pored over these questions that Mueller gave to you. They have to do with, collusion, not obstruction of justice, because obstruction of justice is a crime that you have to prove intent. And so they need to speak to the president to determine his intent when he fired Comey, to determine his intent when he fired Jeff Sessions, to determine his intent when he tweets that Mueller is a thug, and why he wants it over with and why he wants it ended. But they asked him questions about collusion, and I'm telling you, I know what the questions are because they put the questions in the newspaper back in August or April. I actually have the questions. Maybe tomorrow we'll read the questions. But he says, oh, no, they were very easily answered. I answered them. My lawyers had nothing to do. Oh, please, Rudy Giuliani's all over again. Well, some of them were perjury traps. There is no such thing as a perjury trap. If you're going to tell the truth, and if you intend to tell the truth, and you do tell the truth, and you get something wrong, that is not perjury. That is getting something wrong. And you get to correct the record if you get it wrong. Meaning, was the sun up when this happened? I don't know. Well, go back and check. He's lying.
Your team is preparing written answers to questions about...
No, not my team. I'm preparing written answers. I'm the one that does the answer. Yes. Are they writing them out?
Yes.
Yeah, they're writing what I tell them to write.
Are they going to be submitted?
At some point very soon, yes. I've completed them.
So you are submitting...
And it wasn't a big deal. By the way, it wasn't a big deal. The questions were asked and answered. It wasn't a big deal. You know, they make it like I had meetings for many, many hours. I got the questions. I responded. We wrote them out. I read them once. I read them a second time. We made some changes. That's it. They're very simple. You know why? I did nothing wrong.
Here's my question, though. You are submitting written answers to the special counsel about the issue of collusion, but not on obstruction of justice.
Well, there was no obstruction of justice.
Let me, if I may, sir, just
I think they probably agree with that. And all you have to do is look at Article 2.
Is that your final position, that there's going to be no sit-down interview and nothing, written or in person, on obstruction?
I would say probably. Probably. I mean, I can change my mind, but probably. I think we've wasted enough time on this witch hunt, and the answer is probably. We're finished.
What are the odds? 1 in 100?
I don't do odds.
What?
I gave very
detailed...
You ran
casinos, sir.
You ran a casino,
and very
sir.
Successfully, actually.
Successful
one? We
one?
gave very, very complete answers to a lot of questions that I shouldn't have even been asked. And I think that should solve the problem. I hope it solves the problem. If it doesn't, I'll be told and we'll make a decision at that time. But probably this is the end.
Oh, my God. How are you going to explain Donald Jr. meeting with Russian spies in Trump Tower? I know that's one of the questions. In fact, the questions are in Friday's homework. Okay, RandiRhodes.com, Friday's homework. All the questions. He is terrified that Junior is going to get indicted, not because he cares so much about his own son, because he cares about what Junior will tell them to get his ass out of trouble.
A large amount of the anxiety that we see coming out of the White House right now has to do with concern over the fate of his eldest son. I think from all of my reporting, this is something that is weighing heavily on him. And I will say that from people who have known the president well, who know the family well, it's not necessarily concern for the fate of his child because he's concerned about the fate of his child. He's concerned that if Don Jr. is indicted, that it could perhaps have implications on him. This is not someone who is a parent who is deeply affected by what will happen to his child, but instead by what could potentially happen to him. You know, I think all the time about that New York Times story about the taxes that the Trump family had paid. And it explained the depths to which Fred Trump went through to protect Donald Trump, to bail his son out, made mistakes. You think of Donald Trump's own parenting style and the depths he's gone to his children's financial detriment, to put them at legal risk. And it's such a shift in generations in parenting. And I think the fact that his son is facing legal peril is something that is hard to swallow for any parent. But the fact that that legal peril could then turn back on him is really what is weighing on him.
Oh, my God. He's not worried about his kid because he's worried about his son. He's worried about his kid as it affects him. Wow. All right. Julie in Westchester.
Hello. I've never spoken to you before, but I wanted to come back to that issue you were talking about the press passes.
Okay.
It's from my point of view, when you hold the press to one question, it's more or less forcing the press corps to participate in an advertisement for Trump's agenda because he goes off course. So given one question, he'll take it whichever way he wants to go, which puts the person who's asked the question in a collaborative methodology. And I think that that's an avenue that also has to be explored if they take it through the courts.
Well, this is just the press operating with the sword over their head. I mean, off with your head if you ask a follow-up question. And you're right, they're just going to lie, and then they'll go unchecked with the lie because you're not allowed to ask a follow-up question. So, for instance, when he trashed, LaDavid Johnson's widow. Remember that?
Right.
And they asked a question about how could you say Frederica Wilson is lying? That would be your question. And they said, because I said so. And that's the end of it.
But with this president, unlike other presidents, his methodology is to use anything to go off course. And then that forces the press. It's a different situation because Obama, you knew, would answer the question somehow, even if he went off in some.
It's not
rarefied.
It's not just questioning Trump. It's questioning Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
That's true too.
It's questioning Kirstjen Nielsen. It's questioning anybody in the administration about any decision that's been made, either in issues of war and peace, issues of the economy, issues of health care. How do you ask one question? Like you could say, how do you think doing away with the individual mandate is going to affect premium prices? And they could say, well, I think that it'll force premium prices down. Then you have to sit down. You can't say, but telling.
No, I totally agree.
Right.
That
I mean,
point
there's no way.
There.
There's no. Look at all the follow-up questions in that interview that Chris Wallace had to ask to even get to a point where the president is definitively saying a thing, even though it's a lie. I mean, this cannot work. This is the end of a free press. It truly is.
I totally agree with you. I just wanted to pick up that other side of it, that it forces a participation.
It does. It does. It means that
I'm worried about that.
You should be. This is terrible. This is absolutely frightening to me. This is the most bizarre presidency I've ever seen. We had an election. People know they can't vote in Georgia. People know they can't vote in North Dakota. They knew in Florida. I mean, they lost boxes and boxes of ballots in Florida. I didn't even get into it because it's done. But, we can't vote. We can't ask questions. The press is not the press anymore. It's only, Fox News. Everybody else is fake. Everybody else is a liar. Everybody else is forced to participate in a complete dog and pony show. I mean, what more do people have to see?
It's amazing. Thank you for all your work. Thank you.
Your patience. Thanks, Bye-bye. Julie. No, seriously, what more are you waiting to see? I don't know what you thought it would look like when, a kleptocracy, actually reared its head, or, an oligarchy became that tax bill should have told you something. But these rules, this stupid memo that they wrote today, where you get one question, a journalist called upon to ask a question will ask a single question and then will yield the floor to other journalists at the discretion of the president or other White House official. It says official. It should say officials. They couldn't even spell. I mean, the grammar's wrong here. Or other White House official taking questions. A follow-up question or questions may be permitted, and where a follow-up has been allowed, the questioner will then yield the floor. Yielding the floor includes, when applicable, physically surrendering the microphone to White House staff for use by the next questioner. Failure to abide by any of Rules 1 through 3 may result in suspension or revocation of the journalist's hard pass. They specifically go through this letter. I'll tweet it out, but they go through this letter and they specifically refer to CNN in this letter. All I can hope is that CNN's lawyers do not give up on this fight, and that they continue to pursue it in the name of getting a ruling on what the First Amendment really is and what it entails and what it means, and that if you open up the White House to the press, then you can only deny their ability to ask questions if you feel physically threatened, because we have never had rules like this ever in the history of the presidency of the United States of America. We have an attorney general for the first time who's not been Senate confirmed. We can't vote. Buy a stinking podcast.